Welcome to Globe Watch with me, Charles Ebune. Next September 23, the Gabonese Constitutional Council is expected to release the final results of last August 27 presidential election. It will be a day before the General Assembly debates of the United Nations begin in New York, in which nearly all world leaders will be attending, excluding Gabonese incumbent President Ali Bongo. What could be the possible outcome of an already emerging situation of instability to follow after what we have seen just days after the Gabonese National Elections Commission proclaimed Ali Bongo Ondimba as president-elect? To answer that question tonight is the former president of the Cameroon Bar Association, who equally served for some time as the president of the African Peer Review Mechanism and was the vice president of Transparency International, serving equally for many years at the African Union as the president of the Economic and Social Council. Currently, he is the chairman of the International Anti-Corruption Conference Council. Barrister Akere, thank you very much indeed for being guest on Globe Watch.
Thank you for having me.
I would like us to start the interview tonight with an exclamation mark. What a situation in Gabon.
Well, the situation in Gabon is worrisome and sad to say the very least. And from my own point of view, I think looking for a legal solution, everybody is now focused on the Constitutional Court as the instance from where the solution will come. But I think in any country, if the winner, the victor, and the vanquished are separated by less than 6,000 votes, the country is split down the middle. And for
49 to 48%
exactly.
between
there you go.
Ali Bongo and Jean Ping.
There you go. There's less than 6,000 people. It's no longer a legal solution that will solve whatever. You really need a political solution that gets the people together for the future.
These are in-laws. These are people of the Bongo heritage.
Correct.
How do you separate Jean Ping and Ali Bongo to come to a political settlement when we know that it's somehow a family issue?
Correct. I think family issue is correct. It's well known that Jean Ping had as a partner Ali Bongo's daughter. They had 2 children. It's also
Sister.
2 children. Yeah, and it's also well known that President Bongo, when he was alive, did have the president of the Constitutional Court as a mistress, and with whom he had 3 children.
Marie Madeleine.
Yeah, exactly. So it is, and then the other members of the court and the Supreme Court who are related to Jean Ping and stuff like that. So it is a very kind of intriguing situation. But that being said, and this is why I think Jean Ping delayed for the Constitutional Court to start, because I was of the opinion then that there would be a political solution, because from the pronouncements from both parts, with suspicions from both parts, it's clear now that the Constitutional Court would not solve anything, because whatever it says, the other part can contest. And one part has the power, the other part claims some kind of legitimacy. So it's going to be a difficult problem. And I think that wisdom and the interest of the Gabonese people would have guided us towards the path of conciliation and looking for a political solution.
Gabon has a population of over 1.5 million inhabitants. Less than 60% of that population went to the polls to choose a president last August 27. What is at stake here? This is a rich oil-producing country around the Atlantic Ocean. What is at stake? Is it power? Is it oil?
Well, I would say everything is at stake. Firstly, transition. From what you hear and from what you see, it is clear that the Gabonese people wanted to break from the Bongo mold. And is pig not part of the Bongo mold? So that's the debate. So that's the first stake. The transition of the country. Second stake is leadership. The biggest group in Gabon, ethnic group, are the Fangs. And they sort of feel that, they also have to take the lead of the country. So that's at stake. And finally, of course, the resources of the country with the stakes by the foreign interests and the proven wealth still on the ground of the country makes the stakes very, very high, very, very high.
Ali Bongo had 49% of the vote as proclaimed by the Electoral Commission of Gabon.
Correct.
And Jean Ping 48%. The provisional results, what we saw immediately is Jean Ping saying, I was the winner of the elections. The National Assembly was burnt to ashes, partially. Is it possible to avoid an electoral backlash as from next September 23 when the final results are expected to be released?
I think that the situation in Gabon, as I said earlier, is no longer legal. It's no longer legal. And from the pronouncements, as you have so cleverly put, from both sides, it is clear that whoever wins, the country will lose. Whoever wins. And from that point of view, I'm very worried as everybody moves towards September 23rd and feeling that that whistle is going to end the game. But I don't think so. I definitely am convinced that we are heading towards an abyss of political turmoil, confusion, and already when you want to talk about who was killed and who wasn't killed, there are divergences. It is a very difficult situation.
It's a quite difficult situation. You have huge experiences in handling African crises and talking about them. And you worked with Jean Ping,
That's correct,
who
yes.
was then the president of the African Union Commission. When you have a former president of the African Union Commission who goes back to run as candidate in an election in his country and it doesn't favor him before the final result and says that either me or not, are you disappointed in him?
Well, you see, when you are the head of the African Union Commission, the context is different. And when you come back to a country where politics is slowly being transformed into a war between ethnic groups, between religious factions, between, certain cases, families, I think that his pronouncements are unfortunate, but have to be taken in the context of the fact that you have people who follow you. You have people who play stakes on you, who gamble on you. And you are forced to mobilize them by showing the level of your commitment. So you have all this. You had it in Ivory Coast, you had it in Rwanda, and all these places where you've had this amazing crisis. This is what is disturbing the mediation in Southern Sudan. The emergence of these strong leaders who just go down the do or die road, and that's sad. That's really sad.
Barrister, I smiled when you mentioned the Côte d'Ivoire, and that has to do something with Jean Ping.
Yeah.
Back in 2010, Gbagbo asked for a recount of the votes. As the president of the African Union Commission, Jean Pierre and others rejected. He is asking for a recount in Gabon. Back in 2010, Jean Pierre told my colleague Ibrahim Sherif, when he was here for the 50th anniversary of Cameroon's independence, that African problems, African solutions. He has a problem in Gabon. He says that those to solve the problem is the United Nations, the European Union. He doesn't even talk about the African Union in which he was heading. This is somebody who lacks legitimacy to talk about rights, and even historically.
Well, I don't know. If you want to listen to what politicians say when they're in such positions and go by it, then you're missing the boat. Politics is primarily a game of opportunism, okay? You and I must have listened with great amazement when Donald Trump suddenly said that Barack Obama was born in the States. That's a case of political...
After 5 years
After
of the,
5 years.
Of the bitter movement.
Yes, the birther movement, he totally refused it. So it's simply political opportunism. Donald Trump went to Mexico in the morning and said one thing, and in the afternoon he was another thing. So it's political opportunism. So I'm saying that when Ping said so, it was the correct thing to say, correct political correctness, I mean, thing to say at that time.
Well,
that
Trump says that it doesn't exist, political correctness doesn't exist.
Well, that is it, exactly. So, and don't forget that the context of elections in Cote d'Ivoire were rather different, because even the UN was a stakeholder. The UN was a stakeholder in these elections, was involved by the agreement made to be part of the process, to be able to follow up the process and even talk about the voting. So it is rather different. It was rather different. But we know that the functioning of the African Union sometimes make it to appear as a club of cronies among the leaders. And each time you've had leaders of any kind of organization venture into a solution, they haven't been able to succeed. Look at when Macky Sall led his first group of people to go to Burkina. What happened? I mean, the people were not really, I mean, they misread the situation. If they go to protect their peer, that is it. And I'm sure that the diplomatic illness that caught Idris Deby was that, he will go into a situation just coming out of his own elections, getting them his own end of mandate as head of the African Union, where there are two positions. And one, he has to decide for or against his peer, who is still sitting as president. So it's a difficult thing to expect the African Union, through its leaders, to act.
So many people have said that the elections in Gabon were not free, fair, credible, and independent because of what came out from President Ali Bongo's province of origin, Haute-Ogooué, where he won by 99.99%. And the head of the European Union delegation, Sarah Grossier, says that there were huge anomalies. And in return, Ali Bongo told RTL, a French radio, that there were, if we are talking of anomalies, we should talk on both sides, we should be balanced. One thing is certain, there was fraud somewhere from both camps. How do you solve such a problem?
Well, listen, two rights don't make a wrong. And the unfortunate thing that the lawyer I am cannot disregard is the fact that if you look at the voting in the Haute-Ogooué, it shows that only 50 people were either sick, traveled, or didn't vote, because everybody in that region voted, save 50 people.
Or dead.
Or dead.
After voter registration.
Okay, just 50. The average, national average is between 54 and 56% for the whole of the country. So the whole of the country has 54 and 56%. Just that part has 99% turnout.
Do you think the results there were inflated?
Well, a lot of things point to that. Firstly, they were the last results to be recapped. Secondly, it is the results from that region that makes him to win. And everybody who knows what I call the primitive fraud system knows that what you do is to preserve the results of what you call as your stronghold, to come in as the last. So that permits you to tinker. And that seems to have been the practice in Gabon. So I think the irregularities may be from both sides, but I'm saying that the situation in that part of the country bothers me a lot in terms of statistics.
Most people have called for a recount of the votes, polling station by polling station. This is a statement from the State Department, a statement from the French Foreign Minister, Jean-Marc Ayrault, a statement from the opposition camp led by Jean Ping. But you know, the Gabonese law does not authorize for a recount polling station by polling station. It allows for a recount region by region, and that has been done. Should we destroy the law to please some individuals?
The Gabonese constitution prescribes what has to be done. It does not prescribe certain things as being illegal, first point. So, as a lawyer, the fact that the law doesn't provide for something doesn't mean that it's forbidden automatically. So that's the first point.
You want to exploit the legal vacuum?
No, I'm not there.
But the Gabonese constitutional experts say that the country's constitution does not provide for vote polling station by polling station.
I'm giving you a legal answer to something you have postulated legally. But I keep on saying that you can't use the law to solve a political problem. You can't. It doesn't work. But you can use politics to solve a legal problem. That's the way it works. And if people think that you can legally use certain rules to solve the Gabonese crisis, they are very, very wrong. It's politics that solves problems of a country. It's not the law. You cannot, the law might guide you. But when you have a problem where a country is split down the middle, you cannot flash a piece of paper and say, oh, here is the law, let us abide by it. It doesn't work.
Barrister, I'm still happy when you say we should use politics to solve the problem in Gabon. But you see, the politics themselves are very intertwined. When you have the French Socialist Party declaring the winner of an election in Gabon, even before the legal instruments of the country take a final decision, people see it as a direct response from Paris to influence over a former colony.
Well,
it becomes even difficult, even for politics to solve the problem.
Well, but that is not what politics. That is posturing. This is interest protection. I mean, you had it in Europe. You had the Japanese go there and speak. You had Barack Obama go and speak about the Brexit. You had the guy of the UK Independent Party go and have a rally with Donald Trump. But people trying to determine. You have Putin saying that he wishes Donald Trump to win in the States. So people will make statements. I don't see why the Socialist Party, if it feels that its interest are somewhere, shouldn't take a stand. It happens.
What could possibly be the interest you are talking about? Because you know that Barack Obama's statement in London just days before Brexit was that if you leave, you go back to the queue, and that to most British was like a second Boston Tea Party, which saw the British leave the 13 colonies and having the United States of America today. A lot of pressure from other parties of the world, so as if the UK was no longer independent, and the people decided to give them a diplomatic slap by leaving the European Union.
Possibly, but what I'm saying is that...
it can be the same in Gabon.
Possibly. What I'm saying is that at this level of global politics, it is impossible to feel that you can run things in a country as if it was in an island. There's no way.
Has globalization destroyed the notion of sovereignty?
Well, globalization has questioned the limits of sovereignty. It is in question. Even by just adhering to the African Union, we put that sovereignty is questioned. So, and that is the biggest challenge of globalization today, is what are the limits? Is there a kind of law, universal law, that authorizes you to interfere in another country's affairs when human rights are threatened? The simple existence of International Criminal Court puts sovereignty into question. If the Kenyans elect a president as their president, can any other instance in this world attempt to prosecute him for crimes committed on the Kenyan people? If the Sudanese elect a president and an international instance attempt to prosecute him for offenses committed against his own people, These are the limits of sovereignty that are being tried and tested. And that will go on and on. In terms of the environment, it's been questioned. It's been questioned. In terms of protection of the fauna, look at the situation in East Africa. Elephants don't have frontiers. They go from one country to the next. So I think these are the variables of, and so is business. I mean, we look at Cameroon, do you think Bolloré doesn't have an interest to protect one way or the other in our country? So I think that is it. And these interests activate in their own back territory.
You mean to tell me that French multinationals such as Total, such as F, such as EDF, such as Bolloré, which have huge business tentacles, or if you like, transactions in Gabon, may probably play things the other way?
Well, they have an interest to protect. They have an interest to protect. And that's the way it has been in history of politics. Companies have an interest to protect, within or without a country. The companies in the US have interest to protect in the States. They get into lobbying for laws against or for a certain form of oil exploration. So that is it. That's the way it works. And if you think that a political business, powerful business in the country cannot have an influence on what happens in that country, then
you spoke a while ago that they need to sit down and talk to each other.
Correct.
For us to avoid a tragedy. But you know, I was watching Vox Africa few days ago, and I saw Eric Matthias Owonangini, the Cameroonian political scientist, who said that there can not be a peaceful post-election proclamation results scenario in Gabon. You have worked with Jean Ping, because probably he's the main character who is going to determine how the atmosphere looks like. Do you think he has the temperament to sit and talk with with Ali Bongo, his former in-law, to say that no matter what I've said, you are a Nigerian, you are a Chinese, you are whatsoever, you have heard such comments? Are they possible to sit and talk to each other?
Well, listen, I had meetings with President Bongo when I was chairperson of the APRM, the African Peer Review Mechanism. Yeah, and I was there, I visited Libreville, and we spoke about all those things, the electoral process, governance, and all that kind of stuff. I have no reason to believe that he's not aware. But when I spoke to him, I went away with the impression that he was modern and forth and progressive in his thinking.
Not conviction.
Well, the thing is that the calendar he gave...
You were not convinced, but you had an impression.
I had an impression, correct, yeah. But the impression was rooted in the fact that he gave a calendar for Gabon to enter into the APRM process. That calendar wasn't respected. Jean Ping, I know him when I was at the African Union, so I know both of them. But I think that the tendency in Africa to focus on the position of leaders is what has taken us this far down the wrong path. I think that more and more we have to have an inclusive process. And this is what caused us in the 90s to go to these sovereign national conferences, because they brought in all parts of society, civil society, the religious groups, the academia.
Which were very catastrophic in most cases.
Well, they were not catastrophic, they started a debate. I mean, in the case of Benin, they were not catastrophic. They set the ball rolling. Even in Congo-Brazzaville, that's what caused Sassou Nguesso to leave power. So I think it's just that afterwards, a process started to reverse the clock. In Benin, they were the most successful case.
Okay.
Even Gabon had one. Even Gabon had one. Very smartly managed by President Bongo. So I think we in Africa are so struggling with our transition from the colonial days.
What could be the possible impact of insecurity or instability in Gabon to regional countries? Cameroon, for example, we have Nigeria to the west and northeast, which is back in recession, and Boko Haram is putting pressure. We have Chad, which is economically down, and Boko Haram is putting pressure. We have a Central African Republic yet to recover from years of turbulence. And if we add an unstable neighbor to the south?
Well, an unstable neighbor means a weak neighbor. And a weak neighbor means that these dark forces can easily penetrate. And you know very well that in an unstable situation, leaders emerge of all manner of leaders emerge. So you never heard about Central Africa and religious problem, did you? Nobody heard about it. The first time you heard about factions in Central Africa in terms of Muslims and Christians is when the country became ungovernable and unstable. So the danger of an unstable Gabon is firstly population movement, and secondly, it can become a haven for these dark forces, because that's what they're looking for.
What do you mean by dark forces?
Well, I mean, I would say terrorist groups, these extremists. That's what they're looking for. They were able to go to Central African Republic. We never heard about that. Each time you have a small population which is threatened, it is very, very easily manipulated by fanatics who can demonstrate that their salvation lies somewhere else and that they can link up to other forces. So I think that's the basic danger I see.
Barrister Akere, we want to thank you very much indeed for being guest on Global Watch.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.